Oh, let's see what
It's
we
not
got.
on though, Dave. It's not on. We off air. Yeah, not on your screen. I don't know. Do you want us to just go? Hey, how about we just reconvene tomorrow or Saturday or Sunday or something so we can have you on? I mean, it's very important. This is one of those very few black things that are going to happen in.
Well, I can see it. I can see that we're live now. So, um, but hey, Dave. Well, I'm yelling Dave like well, dude. Can you test your mic and see if we can actually hear you?
My man got a whole nother mic now. He's like, nah, I can't actually. My man, get your iPhone X and get on the Hangouts app on your phone and
Yeah, man. We can't hear you, dude.
like I wasn't talking to y'all. What are you doing, Dave? You have to get on the podcast.
Being around the colonizers too long. Oh boy. All right.
So which character do you think fits you the most?
Um honestly, I would probably have to say, well, I'm not gonna say M'Baku. M'Baku was
That's me.
yeah,
M'Baku is me for
you're,
sure.
you're definitely M'Baku. Yeah, Killmonger had a little bit too much rage for my taste, so that wouldn't fit me at all. Although I can relate to,
For sure.
yeah, for where
I can
Killmonger.
honestly relate to any of those characters though, even the women. Like I could relate to their plights. You know, I can relate as somebody who was in the military. I can relate to Okoye and how she felt about duty over heart. And then I can relate to Nakia's desire to help people because you can help people. There was a line in Civil War I heard last night that I didn't hear the first time I watched it. But Peter Parker was like, if you have the ability to do something and you don't do it, then any bad thing that happens is really your fault. That's
Yeah,
deep.
that's right. That's pretty deep. Hmm.
But Nakia out there in the middle of the
Oh,
let's get into it, man. It starts off with with your boy like on the ship, just doing his thing. Like my girl Denai is sitting over there floating like meditating the Buddha. She flying a $1 trillion spaceship.
yeah, that's dope. Like I said, I wish I could, that if there was a tech toy from that, from the entire movie that I would love to just have in my basement man cave, it would probably be that. It would be the either the simulation in terms of the driver simulation.
Yeah, that's the one I would want. The one, well, if I could, yeah, because then I could like just Uber. I could like keep playing Xbox, but then I could be like an Uber driver. I'd quit my job and just Uber all day. I could Uber all day.
Definitely, definitely. I mean, between that, you know, well, honestly, Shuri's entire lab would probably,
Really,
yeah, that
her
entire,
blasters were pretty dope too.
yeah. But that's a pretty interesting thing we could segue into. And I was thinking about this just before the podcast. Okay, we've had, the privilege of seeing some of the best tech minds, you know, in the MCU in these last series of movies. Obviously Tony Stark.
Right.
We haven't seen, Reed Richards much, primarily because the Fantastic Four hasn't been a part of the MCU universe up until this point. And they've just gotten absorbed by Disney, so we don't know whether or not they're going to be, worked into the next phases of the next phases of the MCU.
Yeah, because if you read the comic books, Civil War, Reed Richards was Reed Richards and Tony Stark were part of the pro registration side, and
Yeah,
his wife and Johnny were part of the anti registration side, and so that was a really cool
yeah,
storyline in the fact that the Fantastic Four split up because half of them believed in one side, half of them believed in the other.
yeah. But that got me to thinking though. Okay, especially and for the release of this movie and knowing, the role that Shuri played in the comics, I thought about this comparison or this mano a mano question that a buddy of mine asked me. And who would you take? Would you take Tony Stark or would you take Shuri in terms of just
straight up mind? Tony Stark. But if you include mind and resources, I'm taking Shuri for sure.
Yeah.
Because Tony has done a lot with less. Shuri has all of them. Like, they have unlimited resources. Tony Stark basically has unlimited resources, but it's all coming from here, and he doesn't have like a super powered metal charge, you know what I mean, to charge everything. Like, he had to come up with that core that's powering the suits. He came up with that design. Now, granted, Shuri or whoever was the techno person before her came up with the way to make Wakandan with vibranium something that can power their systems.
Right.
But to my man Tony, his original core he made like in a basement in Russia or something while he was being tortured. Like, he is, I straight up just ingenuity. I'm going with Iron Man. But if you're giving me both, you're giving me the resources and the whatchamacallit, the brain, I'm taking Shuri just because unlimited.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Even as dope as Shuri was in this movie, if there was a mano a mano heads up, battle of wits as it pertains to inventions and how those inventions kind of manifest themselves in the MCU, I would take Tony. Tony. Well, I mean, Iron Man speaks for itself. So, but honestly, I think Shuri is gonna play a really big role in upcoming movies, not just within the Black Panther franchise, but obviously with the Infinity War coming up and the MCU in general, because Infinity War is going to change a lot of things. It's gonna deep six some characters that we're familiar with. We already kind of got a general idea of who's going to get off, who's going to get whacked during Infinity War.
Who you think's getting whacked? I ain't been able to pick that up.
Well, I mean, nothing's in concrete, but a lot of the speculation out there, has a lot of the first generation, MCU characters like Iron Man, like not so much Thor, but Iron Man, War Machine, Captain America. Those guys either may take an extreme back role where they're kind of taken out of the MCU or killed off altogether. And there's going to be a focus of on the second generation of MCU characters, like the Guardians of the Galaxy, for example. Captain Marvel, in particular, she's got a movie that's getting ready to come out. Probably in the summer of this year. I think
Captain Marvel, isn't Captain Marvel a DC character?
That's Shazam. Well, yeah. Well, there's two Captain Marvels. There's that Shazam. Well, there's actually two Captain Marvels. There's a Captain Marvel for DC, which is Shazam, obviously, and there's a Captain Marvel for. Oh, wait a minute, what happened? Woo. Oh, there you go. There's a Captain Marvel for Marvel, and that's who's they have the Brie. I think it's Brie Larson that's playing Captain Marvel for the MCU. So I know they're going to be integrating those characters also.
I'm gonna tell you the theory that I read that makes the most sense. They've established the ability to cure paralysis.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
With them healing old boy Ross, and so they're gonna Wakanda Rhodey, and so Rhodey will be back, I believe, in Infinity War, back in fighting strength, and so also so probably Bucky. I don't know if any of the main characters are gonna die though. That's the thing. I don't know if they're gonna die. Yeah. I think they'll just probably step back. find a way to bring a new generation like Spider-Man and Black Panther and all them into an event into the next generation of Avengers.
Right. Well, I think that also has a lot to do with, who's going to be, who's contractually going to be coming back. Robert Downey Jr. has already said that he's ready to kind of move away and move on from the Iron Man franchise after Infinity. So that, leaves a lot up in the air in terms of, where those characters are going to go. Obviously, if you follow the comics, Riri Williams is the new Iron Man or Iron Girl or Iron Sister or whatever you want to call it, which is, in itself is pretty cool because it's, if there is a representative of females in STEM, in comics right now, that's the new Iron Man. And that is, to me, that's a pretty cool thing. I think as far as the rest of the characters that we're talking about right now, Black Panther is definitely going to take a leading role. Although it's really, not clear exactly how the landscape's going to be shaken out after Infinity War is done.
Well, listen, I tell you what, his popularity's off the chain now that has this record-breaking movie.
Oh, yeah.
So, and this is they keep putting it up in the range like the Civil Wars and all that, but people act like they don't realize this is a February release.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, for the movie to do what it did, can you imagine what it would have done in July?
Yes, exactly.
Boy, and what it might still be doing in July. Come on.
Yeah. I think as we say that, I think this is a good segue into another really good thing that this movie is kind of represented is that Black folk in technology. We our leader may be back.
Let me
Echo. Whoa. Got one mic up.
Let me plug in my
I still think colonized
easy, really?
Yeah.
Huh. Is it still feedback?
Just a little
It's
bit.
going, but it's not beeping.
How about that?
I think it's because you're signed on onto accounts.
Right. What account's gonna have to go?
I can't close the Black Checkers when Aura not gonna be live anymore.
We live, baby.
Wait a minute. I think that problem may have resolved itself. Say it again, Dave.
Wait.
No. We can still hear the echo. And just like that, they was back on mute.
No, I did that on purpose.
I know. But while our colleague is
Yo, we off the air.
I don't see. Well, I would still see live, but
Yeah, it still says live for me.
All right. Well.
Yep. Well,
continue.
As our colleague is working with the technical issues that we've kind of started to show off with, I think it'll be really important to point out exactly some of the reactions and feedback that a lot of us have seen on social media, in the news, just in regards to the release of the movie. And obviously, the overwhelming majority of the feedback that people have offered on the movie has been just off the charts positive, which is what we expected. But obviously, unfortunately, just like there normally is with everything else in the society now, there's there's a loud and vocal minority that has a problem with stuff like this that has anything to do with Afrocentrism or Afrocentrism being depicted in an entirely positive light. And it's kind of reared itself in a lot of ways. You know, anybody that listens to this podcast and kind of has a general idea of what our makeup is knows that we have some pretty diverse opinions in terms of not necessarily in terms of politics, but in general. But what we've seen out of certain segments of our population as this movie has been released and is making the rounds, it's pretty sobering, to see that there's still people that are super threatened by this type of imagery, or depiction of Black folks in general just being successful and having a society that is advanced and completely self-reliant. It was a really interesting thing to see some of those reactions. Whether you hop on Facebook and you see the multitude of threads that are going on, and not just from folks outside of the diaspora either. You have a good deal of Black folks that had something negative to say about the movie that, quite frankly, didn't make a lot of sense to me. But that's just me.
Well, we're not gonna focus on the minority because they got a 96% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? They got a crazy high fan score. It's made a stupid amount of money, and so you got people in this age of the internet is a boon and a curse. It's been great and it's been bad, and it's just because it's everybody has an opinion and everybody thinks their opinion matters, and everybody's opinion just doesn't. Most people's opinions don't. It's not our opinion don't matter. But everybody, if 97% of people want something, they're probably right.
Right. I would. Yeah, that's a good rationalization to make from 97%, 96% of people. Let's talk about some of the tech that we actually saw in the movie. And like I said, for those that are listening that are familiar with the comic, as mentioned earlier, Wakanda, is to say it's a highly advanced civilization, society, is kind of putting it mildly.
I like the ritualistic, like the blend of African tradition and Afrofuturism that was in it. Like, as futuristic as they are, it's still time to take this Black Panther power up out of you and fight when it's time to claim your throne. And I like the man that they call it the Heroes Fall, I think is what they call it. That right. When they turned off the waterfall and like had them people standing up there. I'm telling you, I ain't seen nothing that dope in a movie in so long. I'm talking that all the people was doing that.
T'Challa. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Lit.
That's pretty dope. That was really dope. I think to kind of piggyback off of that, the cool thing about what we saw out of our representation of Wakanda, at least in this movie, was the seamless blend of the cultural and the technological, being blended into a society that you really didn't see a lot of discourse outside of what you saw in terms of the leadership, within the Black Panthers royal circle. And I think that's a very telling thing, because a lot of times, in contrast, what we've seen in a lot of African countries, during the age of colonization and after, is instability. And it was always really cool. I mean, it was really cool to see that sort of juxtaposition on screen. And you have the subtle hints to the subtle references and hints to colonization on the continent. but not so much that it was overpowering and it overpowered the overall message that you know was being trying to be conveyed by the movie. And I thought that was extremely cool, to see that and not have that narrative, the colonization narrative, take over what the movie was supposed to be.
Yeah, I think they did a good job of containing. Like it was a self-contained storyline, and they weren't. It was black, but it wasn't like overhandedly black. It wasn't like, it was a cup. The colonizer joke was like, okay, yeah, white people. And then M'Baku barking at him when he started talking. There was a couple things like, yeah, bro, you white, and we realize that you white, and you just don't belong here. But for the most part, as in real life, black people are much more accepting of white people than white people are of black people, and so Ross had something to contribute, so guess what? Ross gets to be a hero.
Very true. And I mean, obviously for future, future setups for coming into other movies in the MCU, that's going to be important. Also, is seeing that interaction that Agent Ross had with the civil, with Wakanda, with the country of Wakanda, and T'Challa, and his royal inner circle.
Well, it's going to be important to see how much of what he learned he shares with Donald Trump.
Well, here's the thing with that though. I mean, he. I was almost as if they did like a reverse token black person, except this time it was a token white person. But
did you see that joke? So there are two white people in this movie. One dude played a hobbit, and the other dude played.
Oh yeah.
And so somebody said, "Yo, these were the token whites."
Nice.
Bruh.
Nice.
Yeah.
Super funny.
But I think like I was saying before, some of the technology that we actually saw in the movie, one good example was the large futuristic rail system that we saw underneath the
that maglev.
The maglev.
Which is already happening in more developed countries than us.
Well, that's the thing that I don't get. Like we're like the only country that doesn't have, at least that I know of, you don't have a maglev train. But
it's because we can't even get our potholes fixed. I'm dodging potholes in the rain yesterday like it's a video game.
Yeah, and I think that has a lot to do with how our government deals with infrastructure and the public good, as opposed to other countries. And I think it didn't used to be like this in the in the 50s and 60s, especially immediately after World War II and the Korean War. There was a push and an emphasis on infrastructure and public works and things that would benefit society as a whole. That was Dwight D. Eisenhower's that was his whole thing, was
right
making government.
Yeah, but we can't do that and spend $1 trillion a year in defense spending and cut taxes for the wealthy 1% and still fund Social Security and CHIP. Like there's so many things that we'd have to sacrifice to do infrastructure. And although it would be a good sacrifice, apparently right now, the people that we've elected or the people, when I say we've elected, we had a part in electing them by not standing up and voting and organizing. And one segue, side note, I think it was great. I don't know if you guys went to any screening events, but I went to a screening out here in Nashville, and it was dope, man. At the beginning, they asked everybody in the theater to text woke to 91990. And by the way, anybody that's listening, you and your friends do it. Text the word woke to 91990, and it will help you register to vote. It'll send you a link right there. You can register online. And that's what they don't want. That's what they don't want, is for this to become a movement, something where you mess around and get 300, 400,000 people that weren't going to vote. That's what they don't want. That's a side a side effect that nobody really expected to come from this movie. But it's Black Joy, man. It's something that we can capitalize on. And the whole Trump won basically 80,000 votes. That was the difference. Not only one place, but 80,000 votes. I guarantee it's enough just Black people to have changed this election?
Well, I think Dominique touched on a really important point, a byproduct of releasing this movie, and that is exactly how many black folks mobilized for this movie. I mean,
Who's out here?
yeah, I mean, quite seriously, there were more black folks that mobilized for this movie than there were at than the total amount of people at Trump's inauguration, man.
Yeah.
It was, I mean,
fake news.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, not only that, but just like Dominique was saying, there were just so many other things that were integrated in around the release of the movie, whether it's voting rights, or voting, or voting, education, whether it's, historical education. I know here in this area in the DMV, there were lots of things that were integrated into, like, I think HU had a couple of the screenings and discussions that were talking about the real life Black Panthers, that were integrated into, the showing of the movie. And I mean, there were just so many things in and around the area that, that the movie became a catalyst for, in terms of, just getting people involved civically in a lot of things, whether it was, students in STEM, or mathematics, or any sorts of other education, or, what Wakanda was, and how Wakanda was different than what we've been taught, about, African civilizations, modern African civilizations, or in modern African nations, right? It was a really cool thing to see that type of mobilization on that scale, and I think Dominique touched on it earlier. We hadn't really seen anything like that since,
Rock the vote.
Yeah, Barack the vote.
Yeah, basically.
Since President Obama, both times, mostly the first
time. Yeah, it was a lot of hoteps preaching against Barack the second time.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't worry, they came out for Black Panther. Well,
yeah.
I've seen a few.
Let me tell you something, brother. Wakanda is the white man's world, and what it really is the white man telling you that without vibranium, you ain't gonna be nothing in this society, brother.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that's where, like, everything is somehow linked back to the white man, and like, yes, ironically, yes, Black Panther was created by a white guy, two white guys, but they created it as number one as a way to kind of buck the stereotype, and all the things that Stan Lee did, like when he made the X-Men, like he intentionally made the whole tension between mutants and regular humans or whatever. He made that a metaphor for the civil rights movement, and then he made Professor X, a link to Martin Luther King, and then Magneto was a link to Malcolm X, right? So it's not, Stan Lee was woke before all of us was woke. So
look, Stan Lee was more militant than any comic I've ever seen or heard of. Man. Well, when I started getting into comics, and I started, seeing the history behind most of the, comics I was really, feeling, which was X-Men or, Captain America, or anything that Stan Lee had his hand in. I was just like, whoa, is like Stan Lee a black dude? Is that, I mean, is there something about Stan Lee we don't know about?
Well, let's not praise the brother too much. Before this movie, it was a lot of diversity lacking in this universe. Yeah. Wesley Snipes tried to get Black Panther off in the night. Well, not that it was Stan Lee saying no. Hollywood was saying no. But I'm saying.
Yeah, there's a huge difference.
He's still a white man.
Yeah, he's an enlightened colonizer, but he's a colonizer
nonetheless.
But I mean, just seeing the way that that those comics kind of played out, and more importantly, how his comics really really addressed social issues at the time, and not even just at the time, but all the way through his active role with Marvel. That was his thing. He was like, look, we're going to tell the truth in our comics, and we don't care what anybody says about it. And I think that's one of the things that I really, really appreciated about, Stan Lee in general. You
Yeah,
know,
like in the comic books, Anthony Black Falcon ends up being the next Captain America.
exactly.
Can
You know,
you imagine what these colonizers gonna do if they decide to make Anthony Mackie Captain America? Oh my god!
well we've already seen it. There's always a segment of the comic book community that has a real issue with
Yeah, you
black.
talking about Donald Glover being Spider Man?
Yes, black characters
See,
getting
I understand not liking that backlash, and I know that backlash didn't come from the right place. I didn't want that either. I feel like I would rather, instead of you making somebody, now there was a Spider-Man that was Afro Latino, there
yeah.
was never a black Spider-Man, and I'm a purist, right? So I want you to make, just like, I don't think the Zendaya should have been Mary Jane. Just give us a white redhead Mary Jane, and then make another character. There's an unlimited amount of creative freedom that, or creative license that we've given Marvel and Disney, and so they can just make new people. Like Black Lightning on the CW, we ain't really talked about it, but man, have y'all seen Black Lightning?
Yeah.
Black Lightning is like,
Black
that's
Light,
the first thing DC done did right in a little while.
yeah, yeah, we had yeah. You took my segue, but we're gonna segue anyway into that because I mean that was that was part of black discussions about Black Lightning, Captain America, you know those were, I mean, to me, this encompassed an entire weekend of blackity black black characters and movies and shows and everything that were positive. And I think at the end of the day, you know, just that depiction alone is something that I mean, it's invaluable because
Man, listen, little kids get to see superheroes that look like that, man. That's so powerful. It's
yeah,
so powerful. It can't even be like quantified how powerful that image is of seeing he's a king, he's smart, he respects women. Like there is a power to that we will see the ramifications of this movie in 10 years.
So I got a story. So I forgot who it is, but one of my friends on Facebook, she shared a story that her son had said that he wanted to be white because he never saw any black superheroes, and so he saw Black Panther, and he was like, I want to be him, right? So now you got and I've had to deal with that with my own daughter. How we see there was a period of time where she didn't like her hair. She wanted it all long and straight, just like the white girls. But and there's nothing necessarily wrong with having your hair long and straight. But if that's the standard that you see and you don't accept your hair for what it is,
Right.
then that's when it becomes an issue. And so we had to teach her that, hey, this is how God made your hair. It's okay. That's how God made you. That's how black girls' hair, it's supposed to
Look,
be all frizzy
it
and
just
kinky and all that kind of
grows
stuff.
like that. It just grows like
And,
that.
and you know what happened? So after that, we started going to the library, and I noticed that all the books that she would get from the library had a black girl in it. We didn't say nothing. We didn't suggest those books to her. We didn't say, hey, get these. She got them all on her own because she saw girls that looked like her, and she got those books. So and y'all know us. I'm not like super pro black like. I that's not necessarily my personality, but now we have a daughter who can see she sees someone who looked like her and she can immediately relate to it. And now, you know,
oh
we
yeah,
see the positive ramification of this movie. Even if the movie wasn't like the best ever, I mean, it's a and I didn't know if you all talked about that, like as far as like as a movie, like did you like it? Like what parts did you like? What parts you didn't like? But I think
I only
just
have two criticisms about the movie. And the first time I watched the movie, I was so enamored. I was so like soaking up in the black love that I couldn't see anything wrong with it. But
black.
in the second viewing of it, I noticed a couple things that are like, not that there's no perfect movie, right? But
right.
the CGI at times was a little
Yeah,
sketchy,
really
especially for a
at
two
the
hundred
end.
million dollar budget.
At the
Like
end, yeah.
the rhinos kind of goofy.
That was cool though when he
It was
body slammed
super cool.
the rhino.
It was super cool, but like the look of them was a little like it didn't feel that part didn't feel like a $200 million like budget. You know what I'm saying? And then
The fight scene.
when he's on the ancestral plane, I mean my man looked like he's at a mall photo gallery. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like
Well,
it was fly, visually stunning, but
well,
there was
yeah, I hear you, man. I think for me, I think the biggest thing that kind of stood out to me um, was the character development of Eric Killmonger, and just how many, just how his character and his development throughout the movie resonated with people. Either in a really positive way, or anti-hero way, or in a misogynistic, man, this dude ain't crap type of way. And I think
I've seen all those thing pieces already.
exactly. And I think the Eric Killmonger character, the way the MCU crafted it for this movie, says a lot. And I think if there was one character that mirrored, a lot of the things that black men are dealing with in American society now, both the positive and the negative aspects of some of the things we've been exposed to, is Eric, the Killmonger character. You know, all the way from the introduction into his character, where he sees his dad get, done in by, T'Chaka.
Well, we didn't know that was the introduction to
Yeah,
this character.
we didn't know, obviously, but we see, we get introduced to that through flashbacks, obviously.
Yeah, but we get his introduction, man. Can I tell you? I don't know if y'all theater was blackety black like mine was, but apparently Michael B. Jordan is a good looking brother, because you can just see him from the back, and that tight shot came in, and it was like, yes! I was like, all right, like Google a picture, man.
Yeah, exactly. I was just like somebody looking at a slab of ribs, man. So
yeah, apparently he was in there looking like a snack.
Look, I know. So before I'll say this, and I'll say this fast, so I won't get in trouble with my wife. But the first time you see Lupita Nyong'o walk out in that green dress, I was like, man,
bad.
I was like, dang. Yeah. All right, I see you.
And when she was doing her thing on the boat, that little dance that she was doing, that little, okay, Lupita, okay.
Yeah, and see, and I think
actually, go ahead. I got a point to make about her outfit.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing that that I really got from it, is that every depiction of black men and women in that movie, it wasn't overly sexualized. It wasn't objectified. It was very elegant, even all the way down to the villains. I mean, Killmonger, even though Killmonger was kind of a jerk in terms of killing people.
Kind of.
Hey,
yeah. But that dude had an air about him that resonated with a lot of people.
Hey, baby.
Yeah, and I mean, the same thing with Lupita and and the Dora Milaje and just about every character there had an air of ability, whether you agree with the character, whether the character was a villain. There was a certain air about those characters that wasn't demeaning or anything like that. And I thought that was, Ryan did an really good job in terms of conveying that, through all of the characters, the major characters in the flick. And I think that's something that we haven't really seen a whole lot of.
Yeah, Dave, I don't know if you heard me when I said it earlier. I was saying if you change the name of the movie from Black Panther to Killmonger, then Killmonger's the good guy. You know what I'm saying? How many movies can you say that about the villain, where you could really make a whole movie about him as the good guy?
It's funny. So I have a slight criticism, not of his character, but of his characterization. So it's like, well, all right, I will say before I have my criticism, I will admit that I like the juxtaposition. And you all might have talked about this while I was out, but I like the juxtaposition between the regalness of like the Wakandans and like the straight raw street I'm from the hood, you know, that Killmonger was bringing, right? It's funny. It's almost as if like if you put an American black person who grew up in the streets in Oakland, in Compton, and in Baltimore, like if you got them and took them into Wakanda, that's probably how they would act too. So
Yeah, especially if you
so
gave them power.
right. So it's like I it's interesting seeing that, and some people were even saying that the Wakandans were like a representation of like what
Bush
is it
blacks,
called what is it called when you act nice to like white people so that they'll like you, but
Uncle
um
Toms.
no, well, it's a more politically correct term. But
Patronization.
say it again.
Patronization.
Well, that's not quite the word, but I mean that is another term for it. But I guess my point is, I mean, I didn't see it that way. I mean, I just saw it as that's how they're called. One, they're royalty, so that's kind of how they were anyway. So, and if you grow up in that kind of environment, that's just not how you're gonna act anyway. But my criticism is, and people might are probably going to disagree with me, but I felt like I felt like Michael B. Jordan played it a little bit too harsh. I guess I don't know. It almost as if he somewhat overacted. I don't know. I say that, but then it seems overacted compared to how regal the royal family was, and like how the Wakandans were. Like they seemed so calm by comparison. It made it seem like he was kind of overacting his part. I don't know. I don't know. It just seemed like he came off a little too aggressive. Like I was like, all right, man, hold up, man.
Well,
You know.
I hear you, but I think that comes with what they did with the Killmonger character in general. You know, uh, if you're familiar with the comic, Eric Killmonger, was born in Wakanda. Had a stake in Wakanda before his family got exiled, and then he went, to Harvard. Got a PhD in mathematics and engineering, and the dude's about as smart. I mean, he's just as smart as T'Challa is. What they did delivered the canon that they didn't. Well, obviously MCU didn't take that per canon with the Killmonger character.
Well, they kind of did. He graduated from MIT, top of his
Yeah.
class,
Yeah,
and he graduated early.
they
And you
did.
know what I mean? He's hard, but you can understand his reasoning for being hard.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying that they kind of got to that. They got to that mold for the Killmonger character in a little bit of a different way. So, like for example, um, instead of dude actually hating Claw, like he does in the comic, like he would never ever work with Claw in the comic at all. He worked with Claw, for a long time doing special ops stuff like that, and he worked for the CIA, as a special ops dude, and you kind of see that kind of come out the further the movie goes, where he's where you see a lot of his backstory, and he's like, well, I killed a lot of my own, to get to this point, to get back in, so I could kill you. That to me, that was a pretty powerful scene because, that tells me that he hated what he was, but he figured that he could get to where he needed to get to the fastest way possible by embracing what he hated, and that was, his, the people that were oppressing, the people that were in his life. So I think there's a little, yeah. I mean, I agree with Dominique to an extent that there are parallels there. I mean, obviously, MCU kind of took a little bit of liberty in terms of dropping the CIA in there as a black ops dude, and he's doing missions in Afghanistan and all over the place before he comes back and gets involved with Claw, who's everybody's still trying to find out where his mixtape is.
Somebody said that was the sixth Infinity Stone.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, like I said, I think Eric Killmonger is to me he was a villain, but he wasn't a villain. He was, he was more of a tragic character than a villain because, a lot of what he did, although he was a jerk throughout the whole film in terms of what he did and who he killed and how he killed and
Yeah, but you could argue that the Wakandans were jerks for allowing us to be enslaved.
Yeah, that's true, and that's a very good point. I think the other thing that I wanted to kind of get to in terms of what Dave was touching on was the relationship between the Wakandan, between the Wakandans and Killmonger being more representative of, well, not representative, but drawing a parallel to what we see in today when we deal with Africans that are from the continent, that are from directly from societies in Nigeria or the Ivory Coast or wherever, and they encounter African Americans, and you see a lot of the same types of, I don't want to say conflicts, but differences, where in terms of how they perceive themselves, how they perceive their history. Um, there are a lot of parallels that can be drawn from that in terms of how those interactions take place. Some are positive, some aren't really positive, and I think Ryan Coogler did a really good job in kind of briefly giving us a window into how those things kind of play out just through those in that interaction with that character and the Wakandan royal family, because I mean, you saw it. It's like, okay, why is this dude here? He's an outsider. He's an American, and he's an outsider. And
Right.
so, how the hell did he get here? And he's not worthy. Especially when he took the crown, and they saw his methodology. Obviously, besides the fact he was kind of bloodthirsty, yeah, that would be a problem. But there was more of that. There was,
Well, but then there was Wakabi and his people actually believed in that. They thought that you remember when T'Challa was asking him, he was like, "I don't know about that bringing refugees in here because then they bring their outside problems in. But if you telling me you want me and my boys to go out there and clean that up, we got you."
Yeah, that's
So
true.
they were waiting on Killmonger. It was easy for them to
Right.
follow, for them to betray Killmonger.
But you know what? That sentiment, I've heard that a lot. Like, especially in Europe. So a few years ago, I went to Germany, and I was riding a cab or whatever to back to my hotel, and the guy was talking about how there's a lot of anti-refugee sentiment in Germany because like they're just kind of I think it was the Syrian refugees, and so they were kind of like flooding the country, and like a lot of the Germans are like, wait, well, all these people coming in, all these people coming in, and so there's that feeling that if people come from other countries, they're going to bring that baggage with them, and so there's this streak of nativism that kind of goes along with it, which is in Germany, which is kind of a dangerous sentiment there.
You don't have to
But
go that. You don't have to go that far. The party, your party, actually, that's exactly how they're winning elections is by tapping into that nativist feel. The running MS-13 as like, oh, y'all let these Mexicans in here if you want to, but they're gonna destroy this country and they're gonna bring, you know what I mean? Like the fact that the president of the United States is called our neighboring country and ally, a country full of rapists and murderers. That's what we do.
I will make an amendment to that. I'm not officially a part of the Republican Party, so let me just put that out there. I'm a independent.
Oh, okay, my bad. I thought you were declared.
I have voted in a Republican primary, but I have never voted for a Republican president.
Fair. I wasn't knocking you. You my brother regardless. You know
No,
what I'm
I mean
saying? You gotta
honestly,
vote for. You gotta do what makes you happy or what you think is the right thing to do.
I put that out there. I mean, I have my own, I have reasons for not voting for either party, but but no, but it's a valid point though. I mean, you have you know the irony. Most of the illegal, at least as far from for what I've heard, most of the illegals that are here, they're only here because they overstayed their legal visas, not
Yeah,
because they're just rushing across the border. Like
right.
you're trying to build this wall
They
on the
already
Mexican
already
border.
have a wall there for the most part.
There is a wall there, or the part of there's a part of a wall there. So I mean, it's not because they're just running across the border and just no. It's people just overstay their visas and they just don't leave because
Why
it's a
would you?
much better. It's much better to live here than there. But I don't know. It's
Well, I think in the context of what we're talking about right now as it pertains to the movie, um, that's a very that's a very pertinent discussion. Because a lot of times, um, you know, the talk that we've really experienced as it pertains to immigration and the challenges that come with not appearing to be complete jerks to the rest of the world in terms of you know accepting immigrants like our country's kind of been doing you know since its inception. That's kind of how our country has been came to be what it was, accepting refugees and immigrants and
Yeah, but that's the thing that everybody's been doing is just they come over here. As soon as they get in, they want to close the door on everybody else, and it's
yeah. Well, I think that that's a good point, but I also think that a lot of times, the way our infrastructure is set up, you know, or more importantly, the way who has control of how our infrastructure is set up has a lot to do with that type of mentality. Because once you get in and you get yours, there isn't, you know, any sort of incentive to give back or to help those that need them. And that's something that unfortunately that's been the MO of our country since its inception. You know, it's always been two societies. It's always been the society, the folks that either consider themselves worthy of being able to immigrate to this country and inherit it, or in reality take it over because there are already people here. And the folks that they didn't deem worthy to extend those same liberties to, and that stark dichotomy has never really gone away. It's taken a lot of different forms, and it's become kind of smoothed over years and decades and centuries. But that general premise still exists in some form or fashion now. When you look at it in terms of our laws and in terms of who gets the type of scrutiny that they get when they come here and do things by the book or do things according to the law, and still have and they still have to deal with being viewed as anything less than a citizen. And that's you know um, I think that's something that the movie also touched on, not a whole lot, but that exchange between between the Black Panther and the character that Dominique was just talking about borders and accepting
Oh
refugees.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Wakabi.
Wahhabi. Um, that was, that's indicative of the type of conversation that's always going on perpetually here. And, you know, those that, have a sense of, you know, understanding that giving back can be a help, you know, as opposed to just taking up resources, you know, they understand that, you give back and you help people with the right way. Those people that you accept into your country become a part of your country, and your country becomes stronger because um,
Right.
and I think that's the tug of war that was going on in the movie, and that's always been the tug of war here as it pertains to immigration, and not just here, but whether it's Europe, whether it's in Indonesia now, where you have a lot of immigrants going to from different portions of the country. Um, any place where you have people that have resources versus people that are going to those places to either take advantage of the resources to make a lives for themselves or what have you. That's going to be the tug of war. You know,
So I wonder. So I know that the United States, in particular, is the black sheep when it comes to most countries, because we're considered the melting pot. And so we're one of the only countries where it's not necessarily homogenous. Like if you go to other countries, it's by and large is usually overwhelmingly like that one ethnicity. If you go to China, you're mostly just going to see Chinese people there. If you go to Japan, you're just going to see Japanese people there. If you go to even Europe, I mean, you'll see white people, or not even just saying white people. You'll see Germans, you'll see Spaniards, you'll see British. I mean, you go to India, you'll see mostly Indians there. You won't see a bunch of other ethnicities like just mixing in all the time. We're one of the few countries where you see that, and so I wonder if that's why that tension is there sometimes, because we're not necessarily homogenous, and so since we don't have that identity, I don't know. Maybe it's like an identity crisis
Mm-hmm.
because we're not homogenous like other countries. So it's like, who are we? Like what are we? And I don't know. I wonder if that's part of the tension, or why you have those feelings of, you know, keep those other people out of my country because they're not me. But then, with the United States, we're not like other countries in that aspect. So um, it's kind of hard to make that kind of have that sentiment when we're not. That's just not how we have been.
Well, I think you're right to an extent because you got to remember, the inception of our country, people, you know, came from other places, brought their own, biases and brought their own viewpoints of how, the world was from outside of where they came from.
Well, right. I'm not trying. I'm not, obviously the way that different cultures came here is different by to say the least. Obviously, Africans came here unwillingly, but I'm just saying, just from a uh, cultural and ethnicity point of view, just the fact that there's many different cultures here. It's not just that one homogenous culture that you can point to. Like if you say, if you point to someone who looks Asian, they very well might actually be American. But you wouldn't know that because American isn't an ethnicity. It's not something you can point to and say, yeah, that's this ethnicity. You can point to someone who's Chinese and say, yeah, that's a Chinese person. You can point to an Indian person and say, yeah, that's Indian. But you can't point to an American and be like, that's an American. You can be that's just not how our country is.
Well, that's true. Well, I'll say this: some people can, after they hear you talk or something, yeah, they can point to you and say you're an American.
Well, yeah, I mean, at least as far as this physical looks, I guess maybe that's what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
yeah. From a physical standpoint, yeah, I see where you're getting at. I think, I think ultimately, especially as it pertains to, how it relates to what we saw in the movie. Um, there are a lot of parallels there. There are a lot of parallels as it pertains to isolationism. There are a lot of parallels there as it pertains to multiculturalism. Because one thing that wasn't really touched on, you know, in that exchange, you know, uh, that the Black Panther had was, multiculturalism, because
Right.
the Sunni culture that we're looking at was, the Wakandan culture, and as we looked around, I mean, there are a couple of things and even though there are some parallels that are different, from actually comparing, America, comparing that to what America is, or has gone through. America has always been a multicultural country, always, from its inception, and that's what a lot of people kind of miss. Yeah, pilgrims came over here and they had weapons and they kind of took over stuff, but that still doesn't change the fact that a lot of the things that we consider American have roots from other places.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm getting at. It's like we're not homogenous. Like we're not like that one. I don't know. Like
Well,
we're like a bunch of stuff just gobbled into one that can't. That I don't know. I guess some people say that's what makes us strong. That's what makes us a powerful nation. Is because we have strengths from different cultures or aspects of different cultures that kind of collide. Sometimes not in the best ways.
I think we lost our other colleague, Dominique.
Yeah, I saw that.
Where to go?
Actually, we might actually want to stop here because I want to do a part two, and the reason I want to do that is because a big part of the movie is highlighting black women. But as you can see, we
Yeah.
have no black women on this on the show, and I really want to get their opinion, and get their input because I think that I mean that was one of the overriding messages, one of the overriding themes of the movie is that black women aren't, they're not concubines or they're not, they're not just there. Number one, the Dora Milaje will kick her behind in a heartbeat. And two, what's her name? Nakias, he was a spy. Um, and so it's like if I'm not mistaken, I think, um, at least in the comics anyway. I think that the reason why women are esteemed in the comics in Wakanda is because the Panther god isn't she a woman or a female or a goddess or whatever?
Bass the Panther God.
Yeah, Bast. Isn't she a goddess?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if there was a gender designation for.
Oh, okay. Because I don't know why I thought that that's why they esteem women so much because they're goddess is a female or whatever. But regardless, the movie at least they esteem women and they put women in powerful roles. And the thing I like about it, what I don't like when people call for equality, but their version of equality is to put the other side down. It's like that's not really equality. Equality is trying to pull the other side up and maintain a balance so that there's no inequality. And so I like the fact that the the women were esteemed without denigrating the men. It's like saying the men have an important role to play, but the women also have an equal role to play in society. And yeah, I really want to get Crystal and Tiffany's and heck, we can have Sharice and everyone else on here too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
bro,
I got a couple of guests. I got a couple of guest hosts that I have in mind for this too.
yeah. So if whoever's watching or if you're listening, stay tuned for part two. We need to get the women on here to chime in on this because they're very important to this movie. So yeah, I guess we can go ahead and end it here since Dominique left anyway. uh, but for all those who are watching, who are listening, thanks her for doing the intro. Um, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you subscribe below. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss whenever we have any new videos. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play. Catch us on SoundCloud. Catch us on Facebook, facebook.com/The Black Techies, and you will catch everything we do. So yeah, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you tell your friends and family and all that. And we will definitely see you next time. And you all know you got to give a big Hail Wakanda.
Hail Wakanda, Hail Wakanda. Thank you
Hashtag Wakanda forever.
guys for checking out the podcast for us again this week. And just like Dave said, we're going to reiterate there is a part two coming, and this part two will be exclusively about the women of the Black Panther and their role in the movie and just how kick-ass they were.
Yes. Yeah, that one scene in the casino with with Okoye, man. No, see, I don't know if you all talked about the Dora Milaje. Part two, we gotta talk about the Dora Milaje because there's a lot of depth to them. I mean, one thing I liked about the movie is that even the Dora Milaje had like a character arc. Even they had an arc. It's like they weren't minor, but they were supporting characters. But even they had some kind of arc. So I don't know. I kind of like that. But yeah, we'll talk about that in part two. Stay tuned. Talk to you all later. Peace. Oh. Oh. That's what I get.
Oh man, that's funny.